going to stop sharing because it's time to get on with the member spotlight.
Perfect. Here we go. Right. I'm going to introduce our three guests today. We have got Kieth Budden, Shanagh Telford, and Gary Newell. If you could all come into the room and let's get chatting. Good morning. Lovely to see you. Morning.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning.
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 Morning,
There we
Gary. Morning,
go.
Shanagh. Morning, Kieth.
I should be there in a second.
You're going to be there in a second. There you go, Kieth. Keith's in the room. Wow. Good morning. Lovely to see you. Welcome to Member Spotlight. This is the day that we find out all about you, about your business. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing all about it. So I'm going to start with you first, Shanagh. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about your business.
Okay, so I'm Shanagh Telford. I have 4 businesses. So I run the Centre of Complementary Medicine in Petersfield. I'm a homeopath and Reiki practitioner and practice from the centre and also from home at the moment on Zoom. I have a small online Etsy shop, Shanagh Designs, which is jewellery, and I'm also a landlord.
Goodness, that's very busy, Shanagh.
Very.
It's very busy. We'll come on to that later on in the questions and find how you sort of divide up your time according to your business. Brilliant. Gary, over to you. If you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us about your business.
Good morning. Yeah, so Gary from Jigsaw, property maintenance and construction. A lot of you obviously probably know me more as being the workshop manager and floating around Signal. But today, just a little bit more about me on my other side of my business. So we renovate and build small to medium projects locally in and around Surrey and Hampshire and work within the community. So yes, looking forward to sharing a bit more of that with you today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gary. And over to you, Kieth.
Thanks, Lou. Yeah, I'm Kieth Budden. I specialise in GDPR. I also produce the GDPR Weekly Show podcast, which is the only weekly GDPR podcast in the UK. And outside of work, I'm a councillor for East Hampshire District Council, and this year again I'm currently second year chairman for East Hampshire District Council. I'm also vice chairman of this parish council and chairman of the East Hampshire Rail Partnership, and somewhere in all that I find some spare time as well.
Brilliant. Sounds really busy, Kieth. We will get on to that. Brilliant. Okay, so now we know who you are. Let's start digging a bit deeper. Let's start with the first question. So I'm going to start with you, Kieth. Why did you choose the industry or sector or niche that you did? What took you to that industry?
Okay, it really started from when I was at university, because I went to university to study physics, had all the ambitions of being a physics teacher, and then realised how much IT people earned compared to physics teachers, and well, the teaching took a back seat. So I got involved in IT security, and then in terms of the business, I actually sort of fell into it because I worked for one company for a number of years who then went through a round of redundancies, and unfortunately I was one of them. And then I joined another company and got made redundant within 3 months because it got taken over by an American company.
Oh.
And so whilst I was then thinking what to do and sitting on quite I must admit, reasonable nest egg of money from the 2 redundancies, a friend of mine who had his own security company rang me and said, do you fancy taking over my business, because I don't want to run my own business anymore? And so I paid him something like £2,000 for it, which was quite a lot of money back then, because we're talking 1997, and took it over. And since then, I've been running my own business ever since. And I think, to be fair, I've now run my own business so long that I'm probably unemployable.
There is that, isn't there? There's that definite, you know, to go back to being employed again is often a difficult thing when you've been running your own business. Brilliant. Okay. Shanagh, what about you? Why did you choose the industry?
A bit like
hang on a minute. Which industry are we going to look at first? I don't know whether it will be. I don't know. Just talk about your different industries and see.
In fact, all of them, it's the same. I've sort of fallen into all of them a bit like Kieth. I mean, I started out as a microbiologist. I did microbiology at uni, and my plan was to solve the world's health problems. Yeah. And then I started my PhD and absolutely hated it. So then I went into publishing and I wrote about drugs in development, and you don't have to do that very long to become quite cynical. Alongside, I got ill, and I just kept getting ill, and GP was worse than useless, and someone suggested I saw a homeopath, and I saw her and my health improved, and all sorts of other things shifted as well that I wasn't expecting and wasn't looking for, but they did. And I was sort of really trying to find my niche, and I got some careers advice, and they thought maybe, you know, I could do anything I wanted. It really wasn't very helpful, but medicine seemed to be where they were, and I didn't want to be a doctor. I've known that for a long time. So I started studying homeopathy just out of interest. So I sort of fell into it, really. Then the centre, and I didn't practice for quite a long time after children, because it just got harder and harder in terms of making sure all the kids were well, all the childminders kids were well, you know, those sort of complications. Then my marriage broke down, I had to get work. So I was looking around to get back to something, and I heard that the centre, they were looking to pass it on, the business, sell the business. And I've been trying to get back to homeopathy for some time. So I restarted that. I worked at the centre as a receptionist and just learnt the business from the inside. And then they felt that I was the right person to take over. And then that all went through. So that's those two. The jewellery, I wanted to make a bangle for my daughter. I wanted a bangle for my daughter's 16th, and she's tiny. And I couldn't find it. And it was cheaper to go and do a course and make it myself.
Wow.
And I made jewellery when I was a child, but I've never done it since. I used to make all sorts of creative things as a child, and then you sort of stop. Yeah. And it's just been, and I just really enjoyed it. And I thought, well, I'm making all these things, what am I going to do with them? So I thought, I'll start a little Etsy shop, and it's great.
Brilliant.
And the landlord, similar, we moved out of London, and I'm a Londoner, and I was scared we wouldn't be able to get back in. And I worked out that, you know, I worked the figures and recognised that if we rented our property out, we could buy in Hampshire. And that's what we did. And then when my marriage broke up and I was looking to buy, as my estate agent said, I did a bog off. So it was a bit of a fire sale, and no one wanted to take it on because there were some boundary issues and some water issues. Yeah, they weren't. My mother was a conveyancing solicitor, so I knew what I was dealing with. So they're all fairly accidental.
Well, they are, but they're also very close to your heart, I think. You know, going into homeopathy, you recognised in it that it was something that helped you. And if you've got that in your instinct to help others, I think, you know, it's a natural course. So Absolutely. And the jewelry making, I made lots of jewelry out of those little plastic beads and things when I was younger. I haven't ever done it again, though, to be fair. So maybe it's very therapeutic, I think.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
Brilliant. Great. Thank you for that, Shanagh. Gary, over to you. How did you choose your industry that you find yourself in?
I did a bit of a full circle, really. So when I was younger, literally as I left school, I was self-employed. It didn't work out for perhaps reasons that we'll get into a bit later. I then went into an employed, which didn't really suit me, and I got made redundant. So I set my own business up after working with that employer, and realised that I was much better being my own boss, and chose to grow the company, which I've been doing now for about just under 5 years. So that's the reason I chose it, because I knew that I was very good at organising the jobs myself. I could organise my own day, my own time. So that's the main reason, really. So
was it when you were in the employed, when you were employed, was that in the construction industry? Was it in that?
And I was very much so. Yeah, so I learned my project managing within that company, and very, very loyal. But for another reason, it disappeared, shall we say? So at that point, I made that decision that I was going to never be employed by someone again, and that I'd be my own boss. So I'm not going to say I fell into it.
No.
I think probably from when I was younger, when I was self-employed and that didn't work out, learning what I learned as an employed, it probably benefited me when that change came. I think the decision in my head was already made. So
sometimes it's easier to see when you are employed in a particular, and you see what they're doing and you think, I could probably do this a lot better, and then you move to go and do it yourself. It's often a good way of learning, I suppose.
I think I saw the pitfalls that they went through, and perhaps the points that they probably missed themselves, probably not through any other reason that they were a bit wrapped up in probably what was going on within the business. But what I will definitely say, and we will cover that later, is experience in age and going through the pitfalls of work and life really do put you into good stead going forward.
Age is a great thing. I have to say, the older you get, the easier it becomes, I think. Brilliant. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that insight. Good.
Excellent. So bearing in mind what you've just said, what one piece of advice do you wish you had been given before you started your business? And I'm going to pick on Shanagh. What one piece of advice do you wish someone had taken you to one side and said, listen, know this, before you started your business?
There are a couple of things, well, don't do it in a pandemic. That's one.
I think we can all say that.
as a homeopath, I wish someone had told me how long it would take to build the business. That it actually takes a long time, and different practices, different complementary medicines have different models, and some build faster as a consequence. Homeopathy is a very slow builder, and it's nothing to do with your capacity or your capabilities. It just seems to be quite slow. Some people seem to hit the ground running, but for most of us, it's quite it takes longer than you might imagine. I wish someone had said that. It's not about your deal with your rescuer tendencies before you get into practice. Yeah, I did have that, but I did know about that. So
rescuer tendencies. Maybe, Shanagh, rescuer tendencies. I've not heard that phrase before. Maybe you could explain that a little.
So people who go into healthcare, and that's doctors, nurses, and complementary and alternative medicine, have a tendency to want to help people, and that's a great quality. But it can also be a challenge, because you can overextend, your boundaries can be a bit blurry, you can, your desire to help people can mean that sometimes you're not necessarily able to recognise where the boundary is between practicing effectively. Sometimes you have to tell people things they don't particularly want to hear, and it can blur that boundary a little bit.
Right,
that's quite important. Also, if you've got clients, if you don't get that nailed quite quickly, you can have clients who will take all your energy.
Yeah. That's
the single biggest risk, is that they'll just want more and more and more of you, and the more you try and help, the more they'll want. So that's an issue right the way across the board.
I don't think that is actually a solely medical practitioner based issue. I think there's a lot of that with a lot of business owners, especially if you've forged a relationship and your professional objectivity has been lost or blurred. It can be really difficult to, when somebody's been really friendly with you, to put in a boundary and say, unfortunately, there it is. That's the hard line I can't go beyond. It can sometimes be jarring for both parties. So I understand that now. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, and when I started training as a homeopath, the idea was that you'd spend it's a 4-year part-time course, and you'd spend most of that time working with a trainee counsellor, and so you do that much therapy. Now, I wasn't really up for that, and by the time I started, that had wasn't a requirement any longer. But actually, looking back now, it was a shame. It would have been really useful. Right. Because it does work through those. Yeah, it's also, imposter syndrome, all of those things come in quite early on. So you do get, can be a bit of a baptism by fire. But, that's true for any self-employed person, that you can end up overextending, doing too much for clients, not recognizing your own value.
Yeah. I completely agree with that. And at the beginning, when you're starting out, you're just so keen and eager, and you're just taking on more and more and more. And then it's really hard to pull back sometimes, isn't it? Because you've given all of that, and that's what that particular client comes to expect.
Yeah.
So I get that.
And there's a real challenge because a lot of people, as they start, they've got clients they've been working with that they haven't charged, and they haven't been charging because they're a student. And it's that transition from being a student to being a professional can be really challenging. And some practitioners still have some of those people years on and they're still not charging them. And it's really, it's really interesting to watch how people navigate that.
Yeah.
I've always said that you should charge everybody, even if you send them a 100% discount invoice, because it then ensures that when you have that conversation of, now I'm qualified, unfortunately I can't do this for free, they've been used to receiving that piece of paper and seeing your value on it. And I don't think it's just a problem in your industry. I think it's whenever anyone starts a business, you do have that kind of, I can't believe people are paying me to do what I love. And I will, to get started, I'll charge very little. And actually that doesn't help you out in the long term, because you end up attracting all those people at the bottom end of the market who are always looking for a discount or a freebie. And that can really impact your growth. So yeah, that's
you attract the energy vampires, really, because they know that you've not got your boundary in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that, Shanagh. That's fascinating and useful to hear that. Gary, what one piece of advice do you wish you'd been given before you started your business?
Well, mine's actually my bit of advice would be for both my businesses, both listening to what Lou was saying with regards to having stuff in place for when you set up your business, whether that be when you're younger, when you become self-employed. When I was younger, it was very much I jumped in and you just set the business up, which is what Lou said. You're so excited about setting it up. In fact, I probably didn't really have all, I'm going to use the term, have all my eggs in a row, shall we say. They were very much, I'm going to go self-employed, I'm going to go and do this. And it was very mix and match. And unfortunately, when I set up Jigsaw, I had something very similar again, because on Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, the business that I was working for closed down. Come Tuesday morning, I had to set my business up. And of course, you would never get all your eggs in a row in that period. So again, I was very much thrown straight into having to get everything up and running very quickly, van, insurance, tools, clients, all of those things. So for me, I would definitely say if you could try and get yourself organized and have a lot of that stuff in place prior to setting up, takes a lot of stress out of the way and obviously makes things a lot smoother.
Yes, perhaps you could have done with our self-employment webinar and Facebook group.
I'm feeling that I was probably picked for today because I've got some of the stuff that's come up on here really does throw me into giving those answers. I've got to be honest. And again, the next question will be pretty much along those lines. It is so true. I was very sort of skeptical about what was going on with Signal when it set up 3 years ago. For those that don't know, I got involved with the renovation of the building and getting it all set up. And in a way, that was one of my stepping stones for setting Jigsaw. It was one of probably the first jobs in my first quarter. And I learned a lot about what Signal was going to be doing. And as a self-employed person, I sort of went, oh, I don't really think I need that. But within 6 months of actually seeing it, actually, I could actually see the benefits of what goes on within the building and what it was trying to do within the community. And I really wish I'd had that when I was younger.
Mm.
Yeah.
Getting everything in place is probably the most important thing.
I remember I was looking around when I started my first proper business with a building with people in it that relied on me to generate the income. And it felt very lonely. And I cast around, and of course, it was kind of before the internet, and you kind of go and you ask the bank, and of course they're only interested in selling you more money and more debt. And eventually I ended up talking to the council for a design business. It seemed a bit weird, but they recommended Business Link. And looking back on it now, I did not get some very good advice, and you had to pay for it past the initial free period. So it was one of the reasons why I got involved with Signal, because it's like, actually, this stuff, you need to have a wealth of experience, but you also need to know what you don't know, so you can rely on other people to tell you where your blind spots are. So yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Even if you're just talking to people, Stu, to be honest, isn't it? Even if you're just literally having a conversation over a coffee, sometimes that I never had that kind of interaction when I was 18, 19.
No.
And if I'd have spoken to somebody and said, "Oh, have you done this and have you done that?" I'd probably have gone, "What's that?"
Yeah, I mean, what we're really keen to do at Signal within the Biz Hub is go and talk to colleges. We've already done one at Alton, so that the students that are studying business studies, etc., and are interested in that, you know, offering it out to them to come, you know, to listen at that age. I think we're going to be doing it again over in Farnborough way as well, just to kind of, just to enlighten people, because as you say, you just don't know. You don't know what you've got the idea. And it's all about, you know, not putting people off if they've got this entrepreneurial spirit. We need entrepreneurs, so give them some tools to get started.
Going down the Signal route, of course, you've got the skills centre.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
But yeah, that would have been that's one thing that I would definitely have given. It would have held me in good fast when I was younger. I may not have still made that business work then because I was young and naive and thought that the world was never going to end. But what that did do is it gave me a really good platform for what I moved into 5 years ago.
Excellent. Keith, you've been sitting there patiently biding your time, but what one piece of advice do you wish you'd been given before you started your business, or in fact, bought your business?
I actually didn't do two very quickly, Stu, but I think they follow on from what the others have said a lot. But my first would be get yourself a mentor. And if you get a business coach, and particularly a business coach who's charging you money, which most of them do, then find out what your business coach has actually done other than being a business coach. Because there are some coaches out there who sell themselves as a business coach and they say they've made millions, and they have, but in fact they've never actually run a business, they've just been a business coach. And certainly I've fallen into that trap in the past and paid somebody a lot of money and then discovered that actually they'd never actually run a business outside of what they were doing. So I think that's important. I think that's where Signal helps too, because the members mastermind that acts as a mentor effectively. And even though I've been in business for what, 22 years now, you still need a mentor, you know. And I would say on the business coach front as well, your other question to ask your business coach is who's their business coach.
Very good.
Because they should have one. If they don't have one, then they're not really practicing what they're preaching.
Yeah.
The other issue though, it comes down to price. And yeah, I think we all discount at times, and particularly when we're new. But always, I fully agree with what you said, Stuart, about always making sure things have a value, because if things don't have a value, people won't value it. And, you know, I mean, if we take Signal again as an example, if membership of Signal was totally free, most weeks, most members would not turn up. And that's just a fact of life. But because people have paid money into it, they're like, I paid 66 quid into that. I'm gonna turn up for that, because otherwise I've thrown away that money. Yeah. And I think that's important. And that's not to say you shouldn't discount, because sometimes, you know, there has to be a case of a sprat to catch a mackerel. Mm. You know, if it's a big deal to be had, but you can get into that deal or leverage that deal through actually offering a discount to the first time you get in, then fine. But again, as you correctly said, Stu, make sure that it is shown as a discount, so people know that they're getting a discount on your normal price. And I still do that now, even with customers who I've had for years. If I do something for them that I'm doing for them as a favour, I mean, I have a number of customers recently because of COVID are saying, "Can you reduce our invoice?" Well, yes, I will, but I'll reduce it as a one-off discount, and that discount shows on the invoice so that they know that, you know, it's the one-off, and it's not me actually saying, from now on, I'm only going to charge you 80% of what I was charging you before.
It's always interesting, the discount. This week I've been trying to sell my car, and I had a chap come and he had a look at the car, and he said to me, I was asking 795 quid for it, and he said to me 600 quid. And I said, well, can you give me a reason for that valuation? He said, we came all the way from Southampton. It was like, well, that would be your problem, not a my problem. And I always think that if you are giving a discount, if you try and get something from the other party, like an agreement to pay it early, or just some recognition that you have done them that favour, and that it's, like you say, perhaps a one-off, just that if you give something, you need to be able to get something, because business is all about balance. And if it's an unbalanced relationship, eventually, at some point, either you'll snap, the customer will snap, what you're doing for them won't be as the highest quality because you're just thinking, I'll just get this done because I'm not earning from this. And I think you're right, you know, sharing the value that they actually got for the price that they paid is so important. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm conscious of time. I think we'll move it along. Lou, what's the next question?
I want to talk now about the present day, and people often struggle with this question. When I ask, describe a typical day in your business? Most people go, oh, every day's different. It's always different. I can't possibly say that because but I'm going to go to you first, Keith. And when I say a typical day, possibly like if you take 5 days in a row and put the average out, what does your day normally look like to you?
My day normally looks like checking my emails. I normally check my emails first thing at lunchtime, mid-afternoon, and at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Normally these days a Zoom meeting. In the past it would have been driving off somewhere, but at the moment it's typically a Zoom meeting. I think there are Zoom meetings most days.
Yeah.
But also trying to block out some time to actually do something definite, if you know what I mean, because otherwise it's too easy to get to the end of the day, and when you look back over the day, you think, well, what have I actually done? You know, I've had a nice chat with somebody on Zoom, and I've checked my email, and I've made umpteen cups of coffee, but what have I actually done?
So like a tangible task, are you talking about? Like actually a task?
And so I know it's something you're doing in your teach, but I'm a big fan of lists as well. You know,
I love a list.
Being able to mark things off on a list and say, yeah, I've done those. And as part of that, I actually use what's called, I think we covered it before, but what's called the Pomodoro technique, where you spend 25 minutes locked into a task. And it's very important, I think, I find to do that makes me much more productive, because it means that even if the phone rings during that 25 minutes, unless it's a client that I recognise, you know, is going to be a real urgent problem, they just go to answer phone, and I'll ring them back when I get to the end of that 25 minutes. Because
so by the sounds of it, your day is quite structured. You're quite good at structuring your day. Okay, well that's really good to hear. Okay, what about you, Gary?
Yeah, well, mine's a little bit more, I'm not going to say ad hoc, but I would probably get myself up and make sure that my sites are working and everyone's got everything that they need. Clients are happy with what's going on. So I would normally visit, or my right-hand man would be there just giving me a bit of a breakdown of what's been going on, what the client said. Is there anything missing from site? Do we need to order any more materials? So mine's a little bit more different, I think, probably to the other guys, because it's a little bit more physical and a little bit more, my phone will ring and say, actually, we now need, have you forgotten?
Yeah.
So I get lots of phone calls. My phone sometimes can be red hot from 7:15 right the way through till about 6:30, 7 o'clock at night.
I suppose yours is very different depending on what project you're doing. It's probably determines, doesn't it, how your day looks? Yeah,
it does. Yeah, it depends what trades I've got on site, how many projects I've got going. I've also got very structured lines with regards to getting my quotes out. If I go and see quotes, I like to try and get them out. I've now got a PA that takes some of that headache away from me, which I have to say is a great relief after a day like yesterday. It was just a relief to have somebody that I know that I can just pass that headache across to. But you have to get to that position to be able to take on someone to do that. And I guess that's a big thing for me. And then I guess really I'd probably close down, I don't know, I'm going to say, I like to close down by about 6:30, 7 o'clock. But that doesn't always happen. It just doesn't. My days can be, I don't know, 15 hours if there's a problem. And it can be 6 hours if I choose to close the book on it on Friday at 3 o'clock, basically. So, but yeah.
Okay, that's quite a full-on day, Gary. I hope you're taking some time out for a bit of R&R at some point.
I do try to. I disappear off the radar for a little while.
Well, you have to with a day like that. For yourself, you definitely have to. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks.
That's all right.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah. What about you, Shanagh? Have you got Can you describe your typical day?
I really, really don't have a typical day. It really does depend. Over a week, I'll do some jewellery. At the moment, I'm running the reception virtually, so I'm doing all the reception work. So I'm answering the phone a lot, and if we've got more than 2 practitioners in, I'm in the centre. So I'm doing a lot of actual physical presence work at the moment, which I wouldn't normally do quite so much of. I am seeing clients, so I'm trying to fit them in between. So where I did have quite a lot of structure, so my clinic days were Wednesday afternoon, Saturday. I'm now fitting them in. The Zoom clients are fitting in ad hoc, and I'm working Saturday afternoon seeing clients. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixture. What else? You know, obviously I'm trying to keep in touch with staff who are furloughed at the moment, and practitioners, trying to keep on top of what they need, and trying to keep on top of the ever changing rules and regulations around the industry that keep changing at really short notice. And the documents are now stretching to sort of 46 pages per, you know, and that's just one practitioner, and I've got, you know, 7 practitioners back in. So it's a bit of a
but you've done, to be fair, Shanagh, you've done incredibly well. I mean, you know, we've been talking to you throughout this, and you've done incredibly well keeping on top of it. You've been, you know, you've really understood what's going on and made it your business just to know exactly what's going on. And you've done really well with that.
And on a typical, typical week, it is checking in on everything and making sure that clients at the centre are happy as well, and just keeping on top of that. A bit of Facebook, a bit of email contact, you know, contacting people, just ironing out a few problems, you know. It's quite reactive at the moment, and I find that much more challenging. I do like to plan. I'm a planner too. I'm a list maker.
Are you managing to have any time that you'll be able to look after yourself at all as well during this?
I thought I was doing quite well, and then I took a Sunday off 2 weeks ago, and I fell on the floor and I haven't got up again. So I clearly was running on more adrenaline than I realised. So I'm trying to build a little bit more in.
A little bit by bit.
Because I am working just about every day. You know, I'm also doing I'm doing everything at the centre, so including cleaning at the moment. So because that minimises the number of people coming in, which is obviously a risk.
Well, you more than anybody know that you need to make sure that your adrenals are not overworking.
Absolutely, and I thought I had it nailed, but I was wrong. So no, I am building in.
Build it in little by little, because we all know that helps, doesn't it? But yeah. Oh well, it's so interesting to hear other people's days and how they're doing it, and it makes you, and I'm sure everybody listening today, makes you feel like, wow, okay, so we're all doing this, and you know, we've all got to take heed, and sometimes we've all got to look objectively at our own sort of work practices and make sure that we're putting in that little bit to make sure that we're looking after ourselves as well, because at the end of the day, we are our businesses. As you know, if you're the only person in your business, you are your business. You've got to look after yourself as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Put your own oxygen mask on first.
That's what they say.
Cliche says, but it is true. You can't run your business if you're ill. So, Kieth, what unique skills do you have to run your business, and have you identified any additional skills you need to progress your business? So, what do you think you have that helps you run your business, and do you think there are any new skills that you need to acquire to progress your business and grow it?
What skills do I have? I guess being reasonably organised is probably the one that works most, but also I think having I'm guessing a method, a personality or method that works well in terms of teaching people. Just certainly all the feedback I get from my courses is that people enjoy them, as well as actually learning from them, and I'm a big believer in that. In terms of what skills do I need, I guess part of that is social media, because it's changing all the time, and each time I feel that I've caught up with the platform, everyone's moved on to something else. And so I think that's an issue. And I'd like to be better. I admit, even now after 20 odd years, I'd like to be better at financially managing the company, because in as far as I think when you start and you find that business is a roller coaster, you sort of live under the illusion that it's fine, this is a start, but once I get 3 years into it or 5 years into it or 10 years into it, that roller coaster will flatten itself out. Well, fact of life, or certainly that I found over 22 years, is that it doesn't. It's still a roller coaster, and in fact, some of the dips and rides are more thrilling than they were right at the start. And of course, you know, this year, let's face it, we've all had the biggest dip we could ever imagine in terms of COVID, which, you know, no one could have predicted. And I was actually saying to somebody the other day that if on New Year's Eve, someone had said to me, you know, by midway through the year, everyone will have worked at home for 4 months, 80% of people being paid something by the government, and we'll all be wearing masks when we go into a shop, but we're not going in to rob them, then I'd think they were mad, you know, and yet that's where we find ourselves. And I think actually perhaps all of us as business owners, and I've said this across the councils that I'm on as well, is we perhaps sometimes don't reward ourselves enough for the fact of how we are successful in still just being here. And I think that's something that perhaps we, you know, it's too easy to overlook, really. That, you know, you watch these big companies, let's face it, far bigger companies than any of us run, who are falling by the wayside, and yet us as the little guys are still here. And I think sometimes we don't take the credit for that, but perhaps we should.
But I think it's a little bit like the dinosaurs. You know, a lot of people talk about Darwin, and Darwin isn't survival of the fittest. So Darwin's was talking about the being able to adapt to change, and that was the most important thing. And so when the cataclysm happened and all the dinosaurs got wiped out, it was because they were very specialized but huge and couldn't adapt to that change quick enough. Whereas the small little rodents who were running around were more able to adapt to that change. And that means that, like those creatures of years ago, small businesses is a bit like that. You know, you find a niche, you adapt yourself, you change, and you move into it. So
have you just likened us to rodents, Stu? Just checking.
I kind of yeah. But rodents, you know, they're
successful rodents. Let's go with that.
they find where the food is, you know. Cute, successful chinchillas.
Exactly. Let's go for chinchillas. I prefer that. Lovely.
Densest fur in the animal kingdom, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, good. Another pride fact.
So yes, I totally agree, Keith. Making room in your business to adapt to that change can help survive the rockiest of times. Shanagh, what about you? What unique skills do you have to run your business? At the moment, I should imagine it's every skill, seeing as you're doing the cleaning, the COVID related skills, running the centre, being a mentor and a go-to, and just it boggles my mind.
Yeah, it is that ability to turn my hand to most things. Years and years ago, I ended up teaching music at a school, and I'm not a musician or a teacher. So having had that experience, because music was so disastrous at the school, I figured I could do better, and it turned out I could. So that sort of showed me I could turn my hand to even things that I had no real skill set for. I think that is true. But I think the thing that I've learned the most is my capacity to mediate. So I've had practitioners at both ends of the spectrum, the ones who wanted to close earlier than we did and felt we should be shutting, and the ones who wanted to stay open all the way through. And walking that line and mediating between those two sides so that they didn't end up polarized. And I think that was really, really important, because it could have been so easy to have practitioners split. And I think I hadn't registered quite how skillful I could be in those circumstances. And I feel a bit uncomfortable saying that, but that's the truth. And I've managed to keep both ends of that spectrum on board, and both practitioners, right the way across the board, all the practitioners happy in general with what we're doing, and feeling that they're heard and that I'm taking it seriously, and that what we're putting in place meets their professional requirements, goes above and beyond, and their clients are really happy. So that's just been, yeah, that's been really,
that's brilliant. Yeah,
really validating, actually, in very challenging times, to have your client, because my practitioners are obviously my clients, tell me how impressed they are with what I've done. And I've decorated the centre, I've done quite a lot of upgrades as well.
You have, yeah.
And it's just all looking lovely, and yeah.
So telling, it's so telling that we're able to say, oh, I made this vast error, or I've done this, or I screwed up, or whatever. But actually we find it really difficult to say, I'm really good at that. I did that in an excellent way. If somebody had done that for me, I would be saying to them, they did a really good job. And sometimes it's reframing it, and as like looking at it objectively can be really difficult when we've done a really good job and patting ourselves on the back, which is why the wins, when we talk about the wins, even if it's a tiny thing that you think to yourself, wow, I didn't know I could do that, and I've done that, that counts. That really is kind of a tick in a box that's you've done really well. And it's been impressive to watch, Shanagh, I've got to say, from the outside, everything you've told us. You've done with such measured, calm, all the way through. There's no been any, well, externally to us, there's no been running around.
No, that's what everyone's seen. That's what everyone's seen. It's just under this, when I stopped, it turned out it was just all happening underneath the surface.
Keep going.
It is what it is.
It is.
Excellent. Gary, what unique skills do you have to run your business? Have you identified any skills for the future that you need to improve your business?
Yeah, very much so. I guess from my side of things, I think my organisation with running projects is really, really good. And having to adapt during a day to get certain things done and fitted in a timescale, they're never ever going to be straightforward. So I think I do that very well. But one of the biggest things I find that I do very well is I work very well. Well, let's just say that trades are of a different ilk, and not everybody can get on with trades and with customers. And I think that I can definitely act between the two. So I can walk in with a customer who lives in a multi-million-pound house, a £75,000 flat. And in addition to that, I can deal with the trades, which speak a slightly different language at times. And it's better that they hear it from somebody rather than the client, because sometimes their guards will go up. So I think I do that very, very well. And I would say that's probably my biggest skill, I think, with running my business, is that absolute area there, I believe.
Diplomacy.
As far as going forward, I'm okay with social media. I'm good on certain aspects with Facebook and that, but I'm definitely not quite up there with all the other social medias. So I have employed the skills of a team within Signal to take that on for me now into the future. And I think that's one thing that I would definitely recommend, is to have somebody that has a better understanding of that type of advertising and the running of the business.
I was taught a very powerful word years and years ago when I had some counselling, and it's a 3-letter word that you can add to anything that you do when you're not doing it particularly well, and it's the word yet. So if you say, well, I'm not good at social media, you can change your entire mindset by saying, I'm not good at social media yet, because it's not final. It lets you out. It lets you be bad now, but with the ambition to get better. And I think that with most business owners, they need to understand that I'm not very good at this yet. Yeah, you know, how long have you been doing it? How often do you do it? What is your technical skill level like? You might be more empathetic and be better at certain other things. But the word yet, you just add it on the end there, and it lets you have the possibility of change. And that is so important.
Yeah. It definitely does, and it makes your mindset. It's all about mindset, isn't it? If you can't, I can't do it. Yes, you can. Try. You know. We're running quite short of time, so I've got a final question that I'd like to put to you all, and it's a really important question actually. I'm going to start with you, Keith, and my question is, what is your ultimate goal for your business?
Ultimate goal. I guess the ultimate goal is to have a business which pretty much stops me trading time for money, because at the moment I'm conscious very much that I'm limited in what I can earn by the fact I sell my time.
Right.
and there's only one of me.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at the moment at the idea of sort of developing courses or writing a book or something, so that, you know, I can actually earn money when I'm not working. Because I think that's something that needs to happen. Because again, as Stu said, and as I know all too well, you know, because unfortunately I've had periods of illness in my life, when if you are reliant on spending time for money and then you get ill, it sucks. Because okay, you get medical insurance for a while, but other than that, you know, life gets really tricky.
Yeah.
And good clients, you know, clients you've had for years will stick with you as much as they can, but equally, sometimes you have to recognise that clients will move on because they can't wait for you to get back to a situation where you can help them. And so I think getting away from that whole concept of selling time for money is where I want to get to.
Brilliant. Okay, that sounds good. And what about you, Gary? What's your ultimate goal for your business?
Yeah, mine's quite straightforward, really. That taking the business from what I've got it at the moment, which is, you know, around the 350, £400,000 turnover, I want to turn that into a £1 million, and then be able to leave someone to run the business for me, basically. So that's that's what I really want to do. So that, in fact, what I'm doing is I've got someone that's actually working for me, and I'm really just behind the scenes. That's my ultimate goal. So mine's very easy.
And Shanagh, finally, finally to you, Shanagh, what's your ultimate goal for your business?
For the centre, to turn it from what's really been a bit of a hobby business into an actual business, so it generates a full-time income, because it hadn't done. It was getting that way.
It will get back again.
This year, obviously, is a bit of a write-off, but you know, continue that so that actually it has a long-term future. Yeah. Because it doesn't at the moment, in the sense of when I took it on, and I knew that was the case. In terms of jewellery, carry on what I'm doing, just keep increasing orders. I'm quite happy with that. And homeopathy, I'd like to be working, I'd like three clinic sessions a week full.
Okay, wow, good goals. And achievable goals. They are, definitely. You've all got achievable goals. It's really important, I think, in your business to make sure that you have those goals, because otherwise you just amble on for years and years and years. You should have those goals and have timelines. And okay, so something like COVID can really mess with the timeline. We all get that. But I think then you just move the timeline a little further forward. But working towards something is very, very important in business. Again, with your accountability, the accountability to yourself and your business. So yeah, well, I think we're out of time, aren't we, Stu?
We are. We spilled over a little with those last few words of wisdom, but that's fine. We'll pick up the session at 10:45, because we'll be a couple of minutes to wrap up, and then 10:45 we'll start the next session. The link to the next session is in the chat. The link to the next session is in the chat, followed by the link to the workbook. I popped that back in there. Gareth has given the link to the chat, to the next session in the chat, and the workbook. So thank you so much for sharing insights into yourselves and your businesses. It's always wonderful to find out a little bit more about the people behind the businesses and the people behind the members. So it's good to have you guys.
It's great to hear, and I hope it wasn't too grueling, was it? It was okay. You survived. We've really enjoyed listening to you all today. Thank you so much. I think it's always underestimated as to how much you learn from just listening to other people, and you know, it's really, it also makes you feel that, yeah, I'm okay. You know, my business is doing what it should do when you hear other people are doing similar things. So it's that feeling of not feeling lonely in your business, and these sessions certainly help with that. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, we're off to the next one. We'll see you at the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our guests today, and also to everybody who was here watching us. And we will see you in the next session.
52 pieces of content, enough for an entire year. No excuses, ladies and gentlemen. No excuses. See you soon. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you.